Welcome to the PIO podcast and Season 2. Just some quick facts from Season 1. We published 46 episodes, totaling 1,608 minutes of content, and our listeners downloaded over 4,897 times. I am still astonished on how positive the comments are on the podcast. Thank you so much for each and every one of you who have listened. This season, we will be releasing more episodes as well as launching a Patreon account. Look for regular episodes on our YouTube channel, premium content on our Patreon, and please share episodes with other public information officers in the field so we can continue to grow the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to this passion project of mine. It has been something that has been very rewarding and enlightening for me, and I hope it has been the same for you. Now, as we move into Season 2 with our first episode, here's Joe Trahan from Trahan and Associates. Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Dr. Joe Trahan. He's from Trahan and Associates. Joe, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that.
So, Joe, you retired out of the United States Army Reserve as a lieutenant colonel, and you were the commander of the 314th Public Affairs Operations Center in Birmingham, Alabama. Let's talk about your military background as it applies to public affairs.
Well, I tell you, the military started it all for me. In 1981, I was at Fort Polk, Louisiana. You know, join the Army and see the western part of your state because I'm a New Orleanian. And I asked for Japan, Germany, and even a geographical bachelor tour in Korea. They said, sorry, you're going to the 5th Infantry Division in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And it was a hellhole then in 1981 and a hellhole. Well, in 1978, when I went there, it's a hellhole now. My wife and I went back after 30 years. And you know, in 1981, the Army came and said, look, you have a good writing skills, good speaking skills. How would you like to go to public affairs school? And when I went to Tulane in the 70s, I graduated in American military history, but I took all the communication classes. There were no public relations classes at Tulane. There still are no public relations classes at Tulane. And so I was really interested in it all my life. And I said, sure. So I went to Fort Ben Harrison, the Defense Information School. It was then 13 weeks. We actually used manual typewriters from East Germany. I don't know who got that contract. They were communists, but it was a tough course. But I fell in love with it in 1981. And then every assignment that followed was in public affairs. And it just lit my world on fire. Then the Army came and said, look, we'd like to send you back for a graduate program. And I was in Indianapolis. And I said, well, does Ball State have one? Yes, they do. So I went back and got a master's in public relations and they paid for it. They didn't pay for the Ph.D. You know, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, like Meatloaf says. But it was an awesome experience. That's where it all started, and it was a wonderful ride. I mean, I learned so much. It taught me so much, and it really ignited this career in me. This passion of service to other people, because my why is helping people and also protecting our great nation. Like Stephen Decatur said, our nation, right or wrong, it's our nation. And, you know, my service to my country was embedded in me by my parents. My dad is a Marine. He's 91. He fought in Korea. He was with the 1st Marine Division.
Yeah, Semper Fi. My father was a Marine as well.
Yeah. There's something about him. You know, he tried to get me to go Marines, but they didn't want to pay for my scholarship at Tulane. Money talks, bullshit walks. And, you know, so, you know, my dad said, it's all right, you're in the Army. So, but, you know, it just really fired me up. And I wanted to serve and give back. And public affairs allowed me to tell the story of the military of the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It was a tremendous job.
So you handled some very large events. Mm-hmm. Give our listeners kind of a background of some of the things that you handled.
I came in, I got a job as the executive officer of the 314th, and we did joint logistics over the shore, I think in 91, 92 timeframe off of the beautiful Florida Panhandle that sticks out near Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach. And we handled where the Navy would run this line underneath on the ocean bottom, and it would be fueling from the ship to the shore. And we dealt with a bunch of environmental issues, work with the SEALs, the Seabees were excellent what they did, and it was a joint service. Then we got selected in '92 to do the National Boy Scout Jamboree at Fort APO, Virginia. And I'm an Eagle Scout, and I'd never been to a National Boy Scout Jamboree, so it's my opportunity as a man to go there. And they got permission for us to wear an Eagle Scout badge, those of us who were Eagle Scouts on our uniform. And I was the spokesperson there. I was there for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, a whole summer. We did
a jamboree is quite an experience.
Oh, it was, and we had the thing with President Clinton changed the policy in the United States military for homosexuality. Don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue kind of thing. And the Boy Scouts had come under assault because they wouldn't allow homosexual boys and men to be in the Boy Scouts. So that was a really precarious thing. But again, it was a learning experience. And then of course, right after that, Hurricane Andrew hit, and the most devastating hurricane until Katrina hit in my hometown and destroyed my parents' home and my sister's home. And I had some damage in 2005. And my unit got deployed out of Birmingham. And it was really interesting because we were moving in Chattanooga from one house to another. And I'd been following, and I told my boss, I said, sir, we might be going. Nah, we won't be deployed. Next thing you know, these two sheriffs pulled up in front of my house, and I'm moving with my student. And they said, "Are you Major Joe Trahan?" I said, "Yep, I am." They said, "Well, pack your stuff. You've been deployed." I was escorted to the airport by the sheriff's office.
That's how you got your orders, huh?
Yeah, that's how I got my orders. And we deployed 25 members of our unit within 24 hours of the hurricane. And we came in to help FEMA, and it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, the devastation was terrible. However, the outpouring of support from the people was just phenomenal. We ended up putting 25,000 American troops on the ground within about 48 hours after I think Governor Childs was governor of Florida, and George Bush the first was the president, and they worked it out with presidential declaration. And we had a Joint Information Center that expanded from 25 people. At the end of it, and months later, we had almost 400 public affairs people from all services on the ground. And we had no social media. We had manual and electric typewriters. We had fax machines. You kind of think, really? My granddaughter makes 12 today. She kind of goes, "What's a fax machine?" And we had no cell phones. How do we exist? We had those big, we had satellite phones in these big bags, and it was a phenomenal experience. And then we had the political thing. Clinton was running against Bush. He showed up. It was a phenomenal thing. And then in '94, the unit got selected. And I think because of what we did for 92, 91, the other things, the three before, we got selected to be the lead press camp to set up for the 50th anniversary of Operation Overlord in 1994.
Oh, D-Day.
So D-Day. So as the executive officer, I took a group, about half of our unit, over first to help set it up. And we worked. If you've ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, we worked in a field behind it, and the cemetery was there. It was just awesome. I've got goosebumps thinking about it right now. And a farmer rented the back lot that he had. He must have, and we put up and I don't know if they do that today, but like a television village was there. All the networks were there, and then the rest of the unit showed up, and it was a phenomenal experience. I got to set up the White House press secretary's tent, and I worked with D.D. Myers, so that was part of my task. So it was kind of funny, a funny story. On the morning of D-Day, we got up like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had lived on his vacation cottages on the beach in Normandy. Kind of cool. And the night before, we went to bed really early because we had to get up early. And all of a sudden, there was nothing out there in the channel. And in the morning when we woke up, it was a flotilla of ships. The president's and the Queen had come over, and it was just, and I could think of the Germans going, "Holy shit," But it was as far as the eye could see, and so we got to our site. D.D. Myers came in. She said, "Where's Joe Trahan?" She came up. I introduced myself. I talked to her on the phone. She said, "Show me around." So we're walking. I showed her the tent. Then she said, "Show me the cemetery." So we were walking the cemetery. I'm in my dress uniform, and people are taking photos of it. They're probably going, "That's D.D. Myers. Who the hell is this guy?" And all of a sudden I heard this voice, "Joe Trahan, you SOB." And this guy starts running toward me, and he had an earpiece in, and he had an Uzi and a 45. He was a member of the Secret Service. Oh. And this guy grabs me, and it's a guy I went to high school with.
Wow.
And I went to Shaman High. I graduated in 1972.
Small world.
Yeah, it was. And we had 9,000 1,000 media from the world. The only country not allowed to be there, and that's kind of weird, was the Germans. The Japanese were allowed. And I told my French counterparts, I said, wait a second, you guys fought them in Burma. Well, that's okay, Mediterranean. Don't worry about it. I said, and it was phenomenal. We had, again, no social media. We got to tell the story. I had 150 French women who were translators to be able to talk to all these different media. And then finally, another final story, I guess, keep it story. So I'm in the middle of this thing going on. And all of a sudden I get one of my sergeants comes and said, Major Trahan, there's some reporters here that want to talk to you from New Orleans. I said, well, that's great. That's my hometown. And so this reporter walks in from WWL New Orleans, the reporter, the camera operator, a producer, and an older gentleman who was dressed in a Coast Guard uniform. And this guy says, I have a news release about you. I said, what? He says, yeah, I have a news release. And I looked at the news release. It's my mother who wrote the news release. And it was about me. My mother had been editor of a high school newspaper at McMain High School in New Orleans. And it was photos of me. And my mother found this gentleman, I don't know how, before the age of social media. He grew up 3 blocks from me in New Orleans. And he was with the only Coast Guard cutter at Normandy. He was on the Coast Guard cutter. So my mother did a then and now story. And I thought, wow, that's unbelievable in the midst of it. But it was quite an operation. It really, you think back to it, how did we do it without social media? We did it.
Yeah, you did it. You just had to do it.
I know, you just brought back memories. Thank you. I just kind of rambling on.
No, I appreciate that. No, that kind of summed up some really great experiences. So and that's important because it goes to your background and your training and your commitment to media relations and conducting training. And you're a FEMA trainer. And you also conduct training as part of your business through Trahan and Associates. So what is some of the kind of training that you do and who do you provide it to?
Well, starting with the FEMA things, I've always, one of my goals, I had 3 goals in life. One was to be a White House press secretary, which I didn't make. The second was to be my sports information director for my undergraduate alma mater, Tulane. I did interview with Mac Brown. I was one of the last 2. I didn't get it. However, my son is really living that dream. He's the Dallas Cowboy director of media relations and corporate communications. Been there 15 years.
Amazing.
My son is better than I am. And the third was to be a FEMA contract instructor, both at EMI in both the public affairs field and the executive academy. I've been a public affairs instructor now for 14 years. And just this year, starting in 2022, I've been selected to be an executive academy instructor, not just for public affairs, but for leadership. So I guess in my life, I got 3. I got one of my major life goals. So with the FEMA thing, I teach everything from the basic class, and we just put in a brand new one called L0105, which is the public affairs basic class. And it combines the 290 class, the awareness warnings class, the 291, the joint information system and JIC, and also a big media relations block. So it's now 3 days, and I love teaching it and get them at the basic level. It's also part of the basic academy of the Emergency Management Institute. Then I teach the advanced public information course. That course was redone about 8 years ago by my late good friend, Phil Politano, God rest his soul. And he came up with this wonderful interactive class that we needed for years. And Tom Oshansky, who was the public affairs officer, I think he still is with the Fire Academy and the nation's fire chief, and he's my mentor as well. And they created this wonderful interactive public affairs class that goes on a week. And then they created the master public information course, which we've been teaching now. Now it's in our 8th year. We've got our brand new class kicked off this month, December, and they'll join the ranks of 115 that we've graduated. And that's taught at a strategic level where you're answering to that senior incident commander or the senior federal official on the scene in like a terrible disaster. God bless those people in Kentucky and Arkansas, Tennessee and Illinois.
Yeah.
And I've heard from a bunch of our PIOs who are actually there, but we're training them in strategic leadership, strategic communication. We're training them to be strategists, and included in that block of instruction. And they come 3 weeks. And they just did their first week, the intro. Then there's a second week, they look at joint information centers. And then the last week they come back, they have to produce a paper that makes a contribution to the body of knowledge in public affairs and is placed in the library, the NETC TC library.
So it's kind of like a master's level course,
yeah,
in a sense.
Yes, it is. Almost, it's not a graduate level, but it's close. And see, Phil aligned us in the academy, which to me is the creme de la creme. I mean, so that masterclass aligns to the executive level incident commander.
Okay.
So
excellent.
that way our PIOs can talk to them and as equals. That's what we're hoping they do.
Excellent. And so Joe, there's a couple key things that I saw that you talked in here. One of them was some common practices that you espouse upon. One of them is you recommend to listen, pause, and think, and then answer. Can you go into detail on that?
Well, we all of us we're taught question, response, and the thing we see in media relations is people forget to think. They say things that they don't know why I said it, or heaven forbid, which I'll never be a politician, even though I've done political media relations with only one group, the Alaska Minority Caucus, for 8 years in Juneau. I never thought I'd ever work politicians because they always seem so rote and kind of like question, answer, question, and they don't even think about it. And so I came up with this idea. I said, well, we got to do something. We got to listen to the question. Like I listen to you, Robert. I mean, when I play reporter Cajun Joe, Worldwide Cajun News, who's famous all over the world, and only in his mind, I think, but that's me. And, I listen to people when they speak, and I usually follow the questions based on what they said. And so I teach people, you have to actively listen. Even on Zoom, I need to look at you. I need to, just like the Godfather says, being half Italian myself, listen with your eyes. Listen with your eyes. And again, you listen to people, you give undivided attention to them. I mean, I've been accused of not being an active listener. We all have. So that's the first step. I thought, let's put that in. The second thing is pausing. People just don't pause. We fill it with verbal pauses like ums. Well, well, yeah, that's what I said, and they fill it with things. For 15 years now 16, I would get an email after the Dallas Cowboys played a game with every single interview that was conducted, and came from my son, because before my son got really busy for the first 7 years he was there, he would train with me, which was awesome to have him training with me. And matter of fact, every now and then we do it in the off season. And I would get an email that said, Dad, please review and analyze these interviews. Because I did that for Rumsfeld when I was the Department of Defense Media Relations expert. I did that for all DOD officials. And I told my son, I said, people pay me to do this. And he laughed. He said, you're my father. So I did it for you. And the problem is people just don't pause. They don't use what I just did, a pause. And then the third thing is to think about what you're going to say. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've lost my thoughts standing up there doing interviews. It's a terrible thing. Your mind leaves you and you go, uh-oh, now what do I say? I mean, it's happened to every one of us. Yes. So you think, and then finally you answer. And again, you want to be brief, you want to be brilliant, and you want to be gone. And because of sound bites shrinking, again, when I started in 1981 as a public affairs officer, we had 15 to 25 seconds for a soundbite. Now we're lucky we're going to get 9 to 12. And right. I am extremely concerned, that's just me, that all we're going to see is emojis. My granddaughter texts me back and forth, and almost the whole thing is emojis.
And we'll talk about where that's going in the next, at the very end here. But yeah, absolutely, because it is amazing how many people just run on. And, reporters love that because they'll just sit back and let you go. And you don't even realize what's happening.
It's like the adage, when you're in a hole, stop digging. I mean, you tell people, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. And people just don't want, and I understand that we feel kind of better. We're hearing ourselves talk. What are we saying though?
Right.
What are we saying? I mean, I don't mean to be critical when I do media training, but I want to talk. But yeah, okay. Well, what's your purpose? What's your objective?
We have a football coach here up in Illinois for the Bears, Matt Nagy, and he talks. Yes. And nobody knows what the hell he says.
Right.
It makes no sense. It's just a big circle, and it's very, you just want to reach through and strangle him because it's
Got him in trouble last night. He got a personal foul penalty.
Yeah, you don't know when
Yeah,
to stop. I
on
know.
that hit. Yeah, he did. And they were trying to pull him back. No.
Yep. All right. So next question then. Having a good opening statement for your interview and at the same time having a good closing statement. Talk about that.
I'm a big believer in being proactive. I'm a big believer in getting ahead of the story. I want to shape the message, not be shaped by the message. So I'm a big believer. When you say what's going on, this is the only time my soundbite's going to be longer. Well, the second time is going to be the closing statement. So 2 times. I'm going to give you 25 to 50 seconds to tell me who, what, where, when, why, how, command message, fermez la bouche, which is French for shut your mouth. And you want to guide the interview. That's what I want to do. And I like that. And again, I would tell reporters when I was in the Army, if you're going to trash my Army, my military, you better give me my opportunity to tell my side of the story. If you don't, I'll go back after you. That's just me. I mean, to me, fair and balanced is very important, and it's hard today, especially in today's media. And then the closing statement, I teach people because we're nervous and we're thinking, oh my goodness, thank God the interview is going to end. When at the end, if they ask anything else to add, you're going to add it. If they don't, then you add it. My best advice is repeat the opening statement. This is what I talked about. This is what you can do. Boom, 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 boom. Who, what, where, when, why, how, command message, and stop. I just think it's a big thing. To me, we can only control our own behavior. We can control what they're going to do with it. But I want to give you my information. I'm proud of the organizations I've represented. Have we made mistakes? Oh, yeah. But to me, good stories are balanced stories. When I read, I consume like 8 or 9 media sources a day. I'm a sick puppy. And, because I'm looking, every time I read a story, I'm looking for both sides in it. Because I have a brain. That's why I can't stand talk radio and talk TV about that. I just, don't tell me what to think. That's just my big pet peeve.
That's my job. My job is to take it in and then think about it and come out with my own views. Yes.
That's what I was taught by my mother, who was editor of our high school newspaper. She would have me read stories. What do you see there? What do you think's the truth? That's just me. But I just think that opening statement and that closing statement really brackets what's going on, because you and I both know they might use one soundbite.
Right.
That's it. So let it be the opening or the closing. Let it be your best. I mean, to me, I get nervous, and I tell people, if you're not nervous doing an interview, you're dead. I mean, I just think people tell, I'm not nervous. Yeah, sure you're not. I am. Every time I speak, I'm nervous. But I just know that, to me, that's my adrenaline high. That's how I push it through.
Right. So being neutral and maintaining your neutrality when you're up there, and that's a dangerous thing, because so many reporters are asking, a lot of times they ask you that, how do you feel about it? Or what is the organization's feeling about it?
Well, we were taught in 1981. This is weird because I remember it as if it was yesterday. Something called SAP, Security, Accuracy, Propriety, Policy. And that's something that has stayed with me all my life. And the ability and security, because being in the military, we don't like to tell people with the enemy where we're going before we get there. We want it to be a surprise. And if there's things you can't tell reporters, I teach people in training, tell them we can't talk about it. God bless our colleagues in the health field, in the hospitals with HIPAA. I thought that was an animal in the zoo. I didn't know what that was. But I mean, that's pretty important. And you got to tell them why you can't. Accuracy, especially today, the misinformation and disinformation hurts my very soul. My son deals with it more than I deal with it now, because he's actively, and now my granddaughter, who's 12, is interested in this profession. God only knows what she's going to be dealing with in the next 8, 9, 10 years. But accuracy is key. The first P is for propriety. The military taught me something that I worship every day. We do not release the names of any persons killed, injured, or missing until next of kin have been notified. That's, to me, is propriety. And then policy, what you just talked about. When I was in the Army, because I hated that slogan, Army in One. I thought it was terrible. I'm glad what they have now, Army Strong. The Marines have always kept theirs really simple and to the point. But I just think it's important when you represent an organization, your personal opinion doesn't matter in public. That's the way I operated. And I would tell people when I train today, when you walk out there to deliver a statement, you are your organization. And I have a personal opinion. I would tell people, sure I do. However, this is the policy. This is what we're doing. And I would stick with that. I try never to go down that path, even though we're tempted. How do you feel about that? What do you think? No, what's important here is to remember this is what our organization is doing. And to me, the policy battle is fought inside the boardroom, inside in the innards of the organization. That's probably why I didn't make full colonel, because I was pretty adamant a lot of times about things. And in the South we have an expression, you buck ugly naked. I mean, I don't know what that means, and I'm a Southerner, but I told a few generals that as a lieutenant colonel. And of course, if you tell a general that, you got to make sure you tell a general what you want to do to clean it up, which I did. But I remember a general telling me, "You'll never make full colonel." He was right. I retired as lieutenant colonel. I mean, because I just felt that was my duty. That was my duty as the keeper of the king's conscience. So I don't know. I'm just a real big stickler in those kind of things.
Not a problem. I appreciate that. And then to kind of add, this is a kind of a final part of this, bridging statements or bridging comments.
Well, I'm a big believer of that proactive approach. When you do bridging, you answer the question if you know it. It drives me crazy watching people dodge and weave and spin. Answer the question if you know it. It's in your lane. Probably the Coast Guard is probably the finest service. I did a lot of work with them over the years, and I kind of missed that contract because they're a small service like the Marine Corps. And I tell you what, they believed in it. Their adage, their policy was, if that's your job, you own it. That's what you're working on. Talk about it. That's the answer. Then a slash would be if I'm doing this on a whiteboard or a chalkboard, I'm really dating myself now, or a chart, then I would then acknowledge. And if you don't know something, tell them, I've got a Ph.D. Do I know everything? No way. Just ask my 12-year-old granddaughter. She'll tell you I don't know everything. I mean, she's my IT support, I mean, she, all I got to do is feed her and give her ice cream. She's good, but of course I gave her money today for her birthday, but that's going to be tonight. But understand, acknowledge something, and then you bridge. And so I have 10 bridging phrases that I pulled together. And coming from Ball State, I guess that came from David Letterman, with his top 10. Mm-hmm. Letterman gives $1 million to the university. And then he has a plaque on the building to all students who inspire to get a C. David Letterman. That's amazing. So, so I have his top 10. Like, let me reiterate the key issue. And what we do, we cross the bridge, and then we get to our command message that we've crafted. We've crafted that command message, and then we stop. And I just think bridging is so important, because a lot of people just answer the question and they stop. And I think of our colleagues and our police officers who, God bless them, they do a great job. But they say, well, I did this. And then they don't talk about anything else. And then you think, wait, on your car, doesn't it say to protect and serve? That's a command message. You missed an opportunity and you left us hanging here. So that's what I think bridging is so important. Bridging to me is that proactive approach to the message. I mean, if you messed up, you messed up. I would do that. I would say, yeah, we messed up. And let me reiterate, this is what we're doing to fix it. I mean, to me, what's wrong with that? The problem is getting the lawyers to buy into that and go, oh, okay, you can say that,
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the most interesting thing is a lot of people that are in the field, they're afraid to practice what they do. And hearing that your son sends you emails with interviews and says, Dad, can you give me a review on the interviews so that he can practice and make them better?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And he works with the players. He's really good at that. I mean, he's, like I said, he's better than I am. And he just takes what I give him, and I give him feedback, and he goes back to him and say, hey, this is what you did. And he works diligently to try and improve what they're doing. Of course, Jerry Jones is Jerry Jones. He's going to say whatever he wants to
of course,
because my son has given him talking points and different things. And surprisingly, over the years, he's gotten more and more where he's used his talking points. And Dak Prescott is phenomenal. The feedback. I mean, he says, I wish my son was making as much as Dak was making, but Dak is a great guy. Dak sits across from him, and my son tells him, and he takes it in and he improves it every time. And so that to me is really heartwarming for me, because he's making a difference there. And of course, he feels he's not really making a difference in the world. And I think he'd make a great FEMA instructor if he ever wants to get out of that. But I think he's there forever. I think he'll eventually be the director of the Cowboys, but I'm not wearing that stuff. I'm a Saints fan, so it ain't going away. He knows that. He knows that.
And so where do you see public sector crisis communications going in the next 5 years and in the next 10 years? You brought up the emojis.
Yeah, I think that, and we saw it with Kentucky, Illinois. Well, Illinois got it too, your state, and Tennessee and Arkansas.
Yeah.
I just think it's still the same thing. We have 1 to 3 minutes in a crisis to get something out. We're talking 90 seconds. When I started in 1981, we were told we have an hour, the golden hour. That's been like that movie Stripes, blown up. What happened to your drill sergeant? Blown up, sir. That's gone. The paradigm's gone. So if you don't put something out, like a holding statement, past, present, future, within 90 seconds, you're behind it. Even what we saw, the tragedy from those tornadoes, we'll continue to see that. Secondly, I think this really troubles me is the misinformation and disinformation that comes, and I'm going to lay it where I think it is, and I could be totally wrong. Fake book. I just think it's disgusting. I just think, and I hate to say any way, well, why not? I just think somebody needs to monitor that, because you're putting people at risk from the information that goes out. And that really troubles me, because we teach our female public affairs officers. There's 4 pillars of messages. There's hope, stability, compassion, and trust. And I tell you, the fake book that goes out just destroys and deteriorates that. And I think that's going to be something that we're trying to teach them. How do we deal with it? We've had numerous papers about how to deal with the trolls, how to deal with what's going on. But crisis communication is going to keep happening. Unfortunately, I'm supposed to be moving to semi-retirement, but I'm afraid crises happen pretty much every day. So I think that the misinformation and disinformation is there. And I think thirdly, the fact that you talked about emojis, and then there's a language problem situation, because I did some work for the California folks out there in public affairs, and in Los Angeles County alone, there are 150 languages spoken. I know Illinois has numerous languages. And how do we communicate in a crisis like a tornado, which scares the living bejeebies out of me? Because I've lived through 11 hurricanes. I know hurricanes, but and now tornadoes scare me as well as earthquake, because I don't know what to do. So I think the fact that the speed of the information and how we communicate that information becomes critical. Now, do emojis work? Can emojis have different meanings? You better believe they can. And just like languages and symbols. So I think that's a third thing. And I think fourth, I think people need to, and just me, we've seen it. I've been in the profession for 40 years. It's the same thing. We didn't have a crisis plan. We never thought it would happen here. Well, it's not if. Steve Fink, a book I use I teach an emergency communication class for Towson. I've been teaching it for 14 years online. So I guess we were ahead of the curve here. And the book it's called Crisis Management. It was published in the 1980s, and I still use it. And he made a comment. He said 85% of all American corporations will have at least one corporate crisis in its life. And if you think about it, probably if you went back and looked at it, I think closer to 90% now. So I think if you don't have a plan, you're flirting with disaster, like Molly Hatchet's song, flirting with disaster. So I think those are the trends I see for crisis communication. And then, finally, I think the people who practice and know what they're doing, understand that it's to me, it's muscle brain power. It's like the military taught us. We did things over and over and over again. So when the crisis happened, or you were taking your weapon apart, you knew how. I could take my weapon apart. Can't do it now. I could take my weapon apart blindfolded.
Right.
They did that on purpose. They did it on purpose because it was muscle memory.
Memory. Yep.
Exactly. So when it was a crisis, all I did is think and act. And again, I think that's important. So,
well, and that's kind of like where a lot of corporations get into trouble. They go and they spend all this time and effort to put a crisis manual together, and then they have the crisis manual, but they never practice it. Exactly. And it sits on a shelf somewhere or in somebody's office and collects dust, and then they never work on it. And when the crisis happens, they're like, what do we do?
That's right. And they think it'll never happen. They think it'll never. I feel for that candle manufacturer. I don't know what the truth is. If they told those people not to leave, they get in trouble. More than likely to some kind of rumors that spread. But my God, you would think, you're exactly right, Robert. They would think it'll never happen here. It'll never occur here. And you think about active shooting. I went to an all-male high school. We never had active shooting. Two guys would fight, and we had two principals called Bumper and Fender, two big dudes. They'd come and pick you up, and they'd bring you, and they'd put on boxing gloves like in a boxing ring, and people would beat each other up, and then they'd hug each other. I don't remember a knife. I don't remember a pistol on campus. I remember fights, but I don't remember any of that. But think about it now. Active shooting just seems to be every single day. I mean, so
Right.
you're right. They don't practice it. And where is the manual? Who's got the manual?
Right.
So-
Exactly. All right. So Joe, let's lighten this up a little bit. I'm going to ask you a couple
Okay.
of rapid fire questions, some
All
fun
right,
ones.
all right.
Your favorite drink of choice?
Probably water now. I mean,
Water? Okay.
yeah.
What is a must-read book for you in your mind?
Oh God. Alan Eckert published a group of historical fictions called the Annals of America, like 5 volumes, 4 volumes, 5 or 6 volumes. That is excellent. That's riveting. I took 10, 20 years to find I have a serious problem because I love books, and it's about an Irish immigrant named Sir William Johnson, that comes to America and becomes one of the major Indian agents, and it's the period about 1700s through, it goes all the way to the 1820s and 30s. It's phenomenal. It follows different parts of America. Those 5 volumes are unbelievable. They're historical fiction. I could pick others, but I'm going to stick with that one, I think.
Favorite food?
Oh God, gumbo.
Gumbo? Well, you're from Louisiana. You
Yeah,
should.
gumbo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you could sit down with a historic figure and have coffee with them, who would it be?
God, geez, I'm quicker. Well, I wrote my dissertation on him. His press secretary, James Haggerty, Eisenhower's press secretary. That was my dissertation. I interviewed 450 people that either covered him or worked in the administration, and he still is the longest serving, most influential presidential press secretary in the history of the United States. He served 8 years for Eisenhower. So I'd like to have him and Eisenhower together. I mean, I have others too, but there was something about their relationship. Eisenhower had a ferocious temper. And when Haggerty started working for him, because Dewey gave Haggerty to Eisenhower, said he needs to be your press secretary. Eisenhower yelled at him, and Haggerty turned to him and yelled back at him. And Eisenhower looked at him and said, "Nobody yells back at me." He says, "I do." If you do it again, I'll yell back at. And I had his personal diary. One of his secretaries gave me his personal diary. I would love to have sat with him and met him and Eisenhower together, because what's important as a public affairs officer, my dissertation talked about 2 out of 3 events that he drove policy. Eisenhower's first heart attack in 1957, he ran the White House, even though Nixon was vice president. And then when we put troops on the ground at Central High School, Eisenhower did in Little Rock, to integrate that high school. Haggerty was part of that. Then Haggerty was cut out of the last one. Gary Powers was shot down over Russia, and he was cut out. And that one failed. So I would love to sit with those two and have, and especially breakfast, because Eisenhower loved steak and eggs. That's what he ate every single morning, steak and eggs. So
Excellent.
those are the 2.
And if you could have a superpower, which one would it be?
To bring unity to our nation.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
I'm proud to be an American. I'm sick and tired of the dialogue between people, the hatred that is spewed. It has ripped my heart and my soul. Again, you and I talking, January 6th hurt my soul.
Yes,
our capital has only been attacked one other time by the British in 1814 when it was burned, and it hurt my soul. I thought our country was a country where we disagreed, we agreed to disagree.
Right.
And I would love to see us get back to that. But the hatred, the venom that comes out, it just, and I have to be careful because I'm pretty strong in my comments, but it just hurts me. I just want, I kind of want to reach out and say, let's just love each other. Let's just figure out a way to work together. When we're together, we're such a great nation, and we've got problems. So let's solve them together. So I think unity, bringing unity to the world, and I would add respect and dignity for all people. Give me 2 other words.
I like that, Joe. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
Well, it's an honor to be a public affairs officer. I have really, really enjoyed my profession. I've had a lot of failures, a lot of rejections. However, and I've try to learn from it. And now that I think I'm at the end of my career, I think that, even though every now and then I get that spark, hey, can I go up and help run the JIC in Kentucky? And I'm hearing from my public affairs officers up there, thank you, Doc, for what you did. And, and they send me texts or they call me when, hey, thank you for what you I think now that the rest of my life is to give back. And that's why I'm really excited about this new gig with the Executive Academy, and that maybe I can shape some incident commanders' minds, and I intend to, how important public affairs is and how important it is to your operation. So I even tell the master students, this is my role now. My role is to be the pain in the butt kind of guy that's calling, because I don't have anything to lose. My career is done. It's over. I get a retirement check from the Army. I get a retirement check, Social Security, and I mean, but what's important to me is to give back now. So if I change one public affairs officer, if I help one make one difference, I've made a difference. I know I already have a legacy. He's Joseph V. Trahan IV. He's really good looking with his beard and everything, and he's really good at what he does. So that really my legacy is already there. So yeah, I think my career is over. I think the rest of my career is to give back. By whatever knowledge I can give, continue to try to learn and deal with things, and try to make a difference, and maybe change one life, maybe make a difference and give something back. Almost like, to me, it's paying it forward for the rest.
And you're doing that, Joe. You're absolutely doing that.
Thank you.
How can people best reach out to you if they want to connect?
Well, they can catch me I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter too, as well. And of course, my phone number is 410-908-3036. My email, Joe_Cajun, CAJUN @yahoo.com, and my website, www, which Robert, I think you went to, drtrahanmedia.com. And, I think my son's listed there too. So, they can reach out there and let me know if I can help them in any way, shape, or form. Thank you for putting me on the program.
Thank you for coming on, Joe. And I will add all of that stuff into the show notes, including the book you talked about, the series of books you talked about.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on the show. And that was Dr. Joe Trahan from Trahan Associates. Thank you for coming on the show, Joe.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.